world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is going to also be a TikTok Live. I did one the other night. This is going to be the podcast for Wednesday, February 4th. Now, as you are listening to this, I'm waiting for people to jump in here into the live. We'll see who we get going. And we're going to be talking news, politics, and making sure to invite a few people here. So let's see who we get going. We got a lot to talk about because there's always a lot to talk about. Now, if you guys have anything you want to talk about when it comes to news and or politics, drop it in the chat and I will get to it. I try to get to everybody as best I can. We got so much stuff going on with this administration, it's not funny. We are hearing that we have boots in the ground in Nigeria. Now, I don't entirely know what's going on there, but apparently this administration has sent troops to Nigeria. And so much for Donald Trump being the no new wars president. This is the second apparent place where he has sent military troops. We have, I see Bren's out there. Hey, Bren, glad you could join us this time. We have troops in Nigeria. We put troops and we put boots on the ground in Venezuela. But Donald Trump ran on being the no new wars president. And the whole thing is ridiculous, right? One of the things that was, constantly used against Kamala Harris in November was, Palestine and how we were involved in wars. Even though we weren't directly involved, we were giving aid, mostly humanitarian aid, to an ally when it came to Venezuela and it came to, not Venezuela, when it came to Israel and it came to Ukraine. But they used that against Kamala Harris. And yet, here we go, Donald Trump is now putting boots in the ground in a foreign country. So we have tons of stuff that this administration is doing that isn't necessarily right. It's not necessarily legal. I don't know if you guys have heard this story. We found out there is an attorney that works with the DOJ that apparently is getting tired of having to defend ICE agents and things like that in court, and has now basically asked a judge to throw them in jail for a day or two for contempt, so at least they could get some sleep from what's going on and basically be sheltered from all of the craziness. And that's a bizarre thing to even think about, that you would have an attorney with this administration so wrapped up in what's going on saying, I can't do it anymore. I would rather sit for a day or two in a jail cell, is ridiculous. Brent says, what's happening in Venezuela? What happened to the president? From what I know about Venezuela, the president Maduro, he is in New York State. They are putting him on trial for some crime or another. I know there was something about gun charges and some other things that they are trying to charge him with. Rocky says, hey, Rocky. But they're also trying to, they put in his VP, this Delcy Rodriguez, and Delcy Rodriguez is basically saying, yeah, we don't give a shit about the United States. We want to run our own thing. So they didn't even do a full regime change. They just put the next person in line, and they're trying to crow about this big win. Typical Donald Trump, does the bare minimum and calls it a day. You know, the whole thing with Venezuela was half-baked at best. And I don't get it. Like, we had to go in there. They claimed it was such a national security thing that we had to go do this. But then all they did is remove the president, put in the VP. That'd be like somebody coming in, removing Trump and making Vance president. It doesn't affect anything. Now, that is exactly what our system is designed to do. But still, Brent says, yeah, and Trump says he will run Venezuela. Yeah, he says he's going to run Venezuela, but it's not working, right? Venezuela doesn't want us running Venezuela. Brent says deflecting from the Epstein files. It's 100% a deflection from the files. Everything he is doing is trying to deflect from the Epstein files. They ramp up ICE things going on in Minneapolis, trying to put pressure on Minneapolis and try to deflect from us talking about the files. It works for a little bit. Then ICE goes rogue and, takes out 2 citizens and all the bad headlines. So then they release the files. Then they go back to talking about ICE. Now there's boots on the ground in Nigeria. He is to the point where he can't keep this all going. Brent says he's like, don't look here, look over there. Yeah, he's trying to juggle everything, and he can't keep it all juggled. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. Let's see. Who else do we have out there? This is what happens to people like Donald Trump, where when they get cornered, they're trying to juggle everything, like Brent says, falling apart at the seams. Exactly. There is so much going on, he can't deflect away from all of it, despite his best efforts. He was being pushed today by Caitlin Collins in the Oval Office about the Epstein files. And this is how the media should have dealt with Donald Trump, going all the way back to when he first started to run. They should have put him on the spot, nailed his ass to the floor. Yeah, Brent says, see how he got pissed at Caitlin Collins. That's exactly what I was just talking about. She says, hey, what about the files? He goes, well, are we really talking about that? We need to move on to something else. And she pushed again. And you're gone. Joe comes in saying he stands with Trump and ICE, and you get blocked. I don't deal with the Trumplefucks. All they do is cause problems, realistically. But she pushes back against him and says, hey, what about the files? And he goes, well, are we still talking about it? And she says, yeah, but what about this in the files? And then he's like, well, how did he put it? He goes, well, I've known you like 10 years. You never smile. Oh, I don't know why you never smile. You don't smile because you're not telling the truth. When he can't get his way and he can't deflect from it and they keep pushing back, then he resorts to personal insults. It's all he's got. He wanted the fight. He ran on a campaign of releasing everything related to Epstein because he thought he could get away with doing what he's always done, which is he'll say, okay, we're investigating it. There's nothing to see here. And everybody would believe him. The problem was he didn't realize how big this story really was and how much his own base really wanted those files to be released. Brent says, or he shits himself. Well, he does that on a daily basis. I would not want the job of cleaning him up. Sorry, you couldn't pay me enough. At all. You could not pay me the amount of money any amount of money to do that. Brent says it's embarrassing. It is. But he wants to give this air that he is super fit and he's in shape and he's in the best health of any president. I'm sorry, the way he looks, I don't think he makes it to the end of what would be the end of his term, January 20th, 2029. I don't think there's any way that he makes it that far. There's no way with as bad as he looks. I think they're propping him up, and that is what they're going to do. They are going to keep pushing with him. Laura says he won't make it to the end of the year. That is entirely possible. He doesn't look great. Howard says, I went to the Minnesota DFL caucus tonight. Cool. Brent says, what do you think of the Clintons talking with Congress? They are sure smarter than Congress. Yeah. Oh, they're going to embarrass them because some of their requirements were basically it's got to be televised. It's got to be recorded. And we don't want it behind closed doors because we know that if you let it go behind closed doors, you're going to, you're going to hide things. You're going to try to misconstrue what we're saying. So let's have it out in public. They're going to get played. Remember, Hillary Clinton sat before Congress and was deposed for like 11 hours over Benghazi. Okay? She is not going to, she's going to have no problem talking to Congress. And between her and Bill, if there is any connections to Epstein, they will probably also have connections because they were friends with Donald Trump at the time. Before Donnie got into politics and ran against Hillary, he was friends with the Clintons. Realistically. They are going to have dirt on Donald Trump. And it's going to come out. And they're going to do it publicly. And they're going to play these fools. And the Republicans don't even realize what they've done yet. They think they're in control. They think they're winning. It's going to come back and, bite them in the ass. Brent says, yeah, she's amazing. She is. Hillary Clinton is going to play Congress for fools. Now, the one thing I disagree with Hillary Clinton on, one of the things she did that I really wish she wouldn't have, was when she was running for president. She ran with this attitude that it was a foregone conclusion she was going to win. That there was nothing she could do to cost her our vote, and that she was just straight, it was going to be handed to her, that it was a foregone conclusion. She didn't take Donald Trump seriously as a, challenger, and if she would have, actually pushed, she could have beaten Donald Trump way better than what she did. Hilo Boy says, yeah, she thought she would get the woman vote. 100%. She thought she would get the woman vote. Laura says Kamala did. Kamala, yeah, she treated Donald Trump more like somebody who could have actually won. Bad Boy says bullshit. Never. What, you're saying Hillary Clinton couldn't have won that if she would have ran her campaign differently? I firmly believe she could have won it if she would have ran it differently. Hillary could have won. Hell, you know what the smartest thing she could have done would have been picking Bernie as her running mate. If Hillary Clinton would have picked, if she would have picked Bernie as her running mate, I guarantee she probably would have won because there was a big chunk of Bernie bros that voted for Donald Trump when Bernie didn't make the when Bernie didn't make the nomination. Scott says, I think she showed confidence and she was prepared for every day debate. Hillary was definitely prepared. Hilo Boy says, Kamala was a joke. The Dems put her in was a bad choice. Here's what I've said about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris should have always been the next choice. But what Joe Biden should have done is Joe Biden should have resigned, and Kamala Harris should have become president that day. And then all of the hubbub, all of that should have happened because she was always the next in line. And then if she ran as the incumbent, I think she wins hands down. Problem is, she was tied to Joe Biden as the VP. She was stuck between a rock and a hard place. She couldn't turn around and she couldn't badmouth she couldn't badmouth Joe Biden. She couldn't change the policies. She was the best choice. Not to mention, she was the next in line. They had less than 2 weeks to end up coming up with a new candidate. Period. They had 2 weeks. There wasn't time to run another nationwide primary. There already had been a primary. The primary winner was Joe Biden with like 90% of the vote. And then Democrats got scared. Establishment Democratic leadership got scared. And they said, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk him into dropping out so we can get somebody else. Let's see. Kate says, everything Hillary said in the debates about Trump is coming to light. Yeah, she was right. Repeatedly. Love Big Dog says, Kamala was a prosecutor, district attorney, congresswoman, and VP. One of the most qualified candidates ever. 100%. Donnie asks, do you believe what you're saying? 100%, and that's why you're blocked. Lucy Dog says, as an Aussie, I think she would have been a great president. She would have been 110% better than what we have. Val says, Kamala wasn't given a voice and we didn't hear from her until that mess when Biden stepped down. I said the same thing. I said early on that she needed to be showcased. They needed to have her front and center so that they could turn around and be ready. If something happened to Biden, that they could be ready to have him in have her in the foreground to take over, and people would have confidence. And then what happens? They convinced Joe Biden to step out, and nobody knew who she was or what she stood for because she got lost in the shadow that is the vice presidency. Brent says she had a tight schedule. Yes, she did. Val says, it feels like the Dems are always too slow and won't fight hard enough. Yeah, there is a fight there. The Democratic establishment is rather slow to react. And they don't think, and when they do make moves, they don't always make the good ones. Angel says hi from Texas. Well, hello. I was just in a live over on Substack. With the Rational Boomer. And we were talking about Texas and maybe the thought of Jasmine Crockett winning the Senate race. Val says Kamala raised a lot of money very quickly. Oh, everything looked like she was going to win. And I think besides her not getting bumped up to president early like I was talking about, and her spending the last 2 to 3 weeks palling around with Liz Cheney, she was at almost every event with Liz Cheney because she was convinced she had the Dem vote locked in. And then she was just trying to get, instead of being comfortable with just winning, she wanted to annihilate Donald Trump and the Republicans by getting Republicans to vote for her. And whoever gave her that strategy backfired. It did backfire. Brent says, where's Mike Johnson? Crickets. Yeah, Mike Johnson, he's barely holding on to his caucus right now. They are right at 218 in the House of Representatives. And if any, there's 3 special elections this year yet to come. If all three of those flip Dem, which is possible, not very likely, but possible, and all it would take is one more member to flip, and they could end up having a Democratic majority before the midterms. Mike Johnson he's barely hanging on to the House at this point, and he is trying to stay out of the limelight so it doesn't get worse for him. Ken says, you slowed a wreck because you're too busy burning down your own cities. No, we don't burn down our own cities. That's bullshit narrative talking that has been pushed by people on the right, and you've been lied to, and that's why you're blocked. Fella says, Dems got to learn to get dirty. 110%. Laura says, Kamala's rallies were epic. She won. Dump admitted Musk rigged it. Yeah, it wouldn't. I just wish I could see some actual evidence and proof of how they rigged it, and then I'd be on board saying that it was rigged. Now, I've seen some other creators suggesting this, and this does make some sense, that the reason Donald Trump keeps saying 2020 was rigged against him is because he rigged 2016 and 2024, and the one that he lost is the one that his rigging didn't work in. That makes some sense, but again, there's not enough proof to back it up. Scott says too many people just didn't vote. Yeah, that's part of the problem. They made it harder for people to vote. Like here in Iowa, they made it so they couldn't just automatically send out a ballot or vote by mail. They cut like 3 weeks, I think it was, no, 2 weeks off of early voting, something like that. They changed early voting hours. They changed how you could register for absentee ballot. They changed a lot of the rules to make it more difficult for the Democrats to vote because they were worried about losing in 24. Val says that little elf is hiding, talking about Mike Johnson. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Love Big Dog says he's licking Daddy's boots. I don't know who you're referring to, if you're talking about Mike Johnson or the guy I blocked, but either one is blocked. Let's see. And speaking of blocked, I just blocked another one. Somebody who calls himself a garbage human trash bag made a comment about a group of people, and he got blocked. Brent asks, is Jeffries a puppet? Hakeem Jeffries? Kind of. I've not been thrilled with what we've seen about Hakeem Jeffries. He's been too close with Democratic establishment and going along with people like Nancy Pelosi. I was really hoping he would do more to end up stepping out and changing the direction of things. Lucy says, if Johnson is Speaker and the midterms are close, look out. Yeah, but Speaker of the House has no power over midterm elections. Val says, Congress refuses to take action. You blame them. Yeah. Congress should be acting. They're not yet. And in part, I think it's because they're playing a balancing act with trying to figure out how to end up getting rid of Donald Trump, holding him accountable, and not losing that 30% of the Republican Party that's hardcore MAGA. They need the right piece from the Epstein files to use against him, or they need something so egregious that even MAGA goes, whoa, buddy, that's fucked up. And they don't have it yet. They're also waiting till it's closer to the election because the electorate has a short-term memory problem. Look at what happened in 2024. They forgot how bad things were under Donald Trump for COVID. They blamed how bad COVID was all on Biden, even though the bulk of the problem started under Trump. I'm pretty sure this is another Trumper who is going to get blocked. Yep. Scott says, If Merrick Garland would have done his job, we'd be in a different world now. Yeah, well, the problem is the Republicans in Congress, when they were doing the impeachment trial on Donald Trump the second time, they said we're going to let the DOJ handle it. It's a criminal matter. Then Merrick Garland comes in, sits on his hands, and says, "Hey, it's a political problem. I'm not touching it." And he sat on his hands until public outcry was loud enough, and then said, "Oh, I guess I got to do something." Jesus Christ, do something? Yeah, you should have done something a while ago. Sweeman, who I already blocked, says, "Show up. Just admit people thought she was a terrible candidate." No, and your whole premise against mail-in voting is dumb. You just don't want you don't want more people voting because the fewer people that vote, it helps Republicans. You guys can't win on policy. You have to win on voter suppression and making it difficult to vote. Val says it's voter suppression. Exactly. Love Big Dog says we need to do ranked choice voting. That would be interesting. Some places have started it. It's just going to be a hard sell to get to most people, just because they don't want to think about it. They want to go in. They want, having to do ranked choice would actually mean they would have to actually consider all the candidates, and they don't want to do that. They want to consider, a lot of them only care about party line, especially on the Republican side. Packle says, "Good evening, Eric. How are you doing? Glad to see you're here." Irwin says, "Read Malcolm Nance, The Plot to Destroy Democracy." I might have to look into that. Laura Lynn says, "What about Starlink disintegrating right after they called the election? Musk was behind that." It's definitely weird. Definitely weird. But also it's a company run by Elon Musk. The fact that something blew up or something didn't work right is also not very surprising. It looks weird, but I wish there was more evidence directly saying that it was something nefarious. Brent says he's done not very little. I'm guessing talking about Jeffries and Cory Booker. Blue says agree, not happy with him talking about Jeffries. Yeah. Scott says, "I appreciate you blocking the trolls. It's refreshing." Yeah, I block all the trolls. I don't have a moderator in here right now. At least I haven't seen TJ out there or Rebecca. But I block them all because it's not worth arguing with them. All they do is say dumb bullshit. That's already been proven wrong. They repeat Fox News talking points. And they report you and try to get you taken down. Blue says he's the establishment. He's got to go, talking about Hakeem Jeffries. Yeah, it would definitely help to have somebody different as speaker. And who knows? Hakeem Jeffries, I heard they were going to try to primary him. He may not survive his primary. We'll have to see if he's even in the House of Representatives come next year to be speaker. Now, if something happens and they flip the House in the before midterms, and he becomes speaker, that would actually elevate him. And odds are he would be the shoe-in for the House next year. Packle says Republicans still so spineless and afraid of the base. They are. They're afraid of that base because they know they're not popular when it comes to their policies, and they have to keep doing things to make themselves to win. Otherwise, they have other issues, and if they don't keep pushing it, it's going to end up worse for them. So they need every voter they can get because they haven't figured out how to appeal to new voters. I think some of the new voters they got, the younger people, are disenfranchised by how this election turned out. They realized they got played. They realized they were lied to, and they could have just cost themselves a generation because of everything going on in this administration. Laura says, Musk called the election 4 hours early. It was rigged. He didn't win. He wasn't shot. And I can tell by your name you deserve to get blocked. A poopy flavored lollipop is what your username is. Says this is why you lose. Normies see the violence. The violence doesn't come from people on the left. And we've got another one that gets blocked saying nothing but, Dementia Joe was a disaster. Dementia Joe? Have you seen Donnie? He's definitely fighting from dementia. He's got all of the trademark tells. It's ridiculous. Val says that the guy I just blocked and nappy Donnie isn't. Yeah, the dude's falling asleep in public. He's sundowning daily. Scott says Dumpy could crap on MAGA's family dinner table and they'd still support him. 110%. Val says two-party systems are not beneficial for citizens. No, it's not. The guy I just blocked a little bit ago says can't handle any pushback against his own worldview. Another reason them lose. No, I can handle pushback when it comes with facts and things. The problem is most Trumpers don't come with facts. And then they turn around and they block you, or they don't block you, they report you, and they do all those things to get you taken down, and they resort to name calling, etc. It is weird. When Donald Trump says he loves the poorly educated, it's 110% true. Deegan says, can Trump succeed in nationalizing elections? No. No, he can't. He wants to, but he can't. And one of the reasons is states handle it, first of all. And it would probably require a constitutional amendment to pass. They don't have 2/3 in both houses. They don't have majorities in 38 state legislatures. And even one of the fastest amendments to get ratified, which was the 22nd Amendment, still took like 3.5 years. It's a slow process. It's not quick. They won't be able to get it done in time for the midterms. And beyond that, if they just try to do it with legislation, they got to deal with the filibuster in the Senate. They don't have 60 votes in the Senate. Love Big Dog says, I'm hoping after this debacle, people will want something different. Yeah. Again, another one saying, continuing just to say Dementia Joe was a disaster before I blocked him. Freestyle says, let's talk about how you got to be a window licker to prescribe to identity politics. I don't know where you're going with that. Cooldown says, can you please explain why voter ID is good or bad? Voter ID is 110% bad. Multiple reasons. First of all, most states require you to identify yourself in some way to vote. Now, I've been registered to vote since I was 18. But the way I understand it is if you don't have an ID, and I had to present my ID the last time I voted. If you don't have an ID, you have to bring in something to identify yourself, usually mail, and usually something official from the government, from the state, from a local government, maybe your water bill, maybe something with a tax return with your name on it, something like that. And then you would have to present, I think it's 1 or 2 pieces of mail, and that would be how you get registered or how you access your ballot. But then if somebody else shows up with an ID that links to that name, the person with the ID, their vote would potentially be the one to count. You would get what's called a provisional ballot if you didn't have an ID. That provisional ballot is only counted if nobody else tries to vote like you. Same thing happens if you show up and vote in the wrong precinct. You know, if you moved and you didn't know where your new precinct was, so you went back to the old polling place. As long as nobody else anywhere else tried to vote for you, your vote would count. But having a voter ID is a horrendous idea because all it does is add an extra step. Plus, voter IDs are not free. If they have some sort of an ID you have to go get, you'd have to pay for that. That makes it a voter tax and a poll tax, which is illegal. Not to mention, well, a lot of the things they are talking about with the voter ID would be your name has to match your birth certificate. And there are multiple reasons as to why your name may not match your birth certificate anymore. You got married and then you got divorced and remarried, for example. You were an adoptee. You just didn't like your name because you're disconnected with your parents and there was a whole bunch of problems there and you don't want to be associated with them anymore. You just wanted a different name, whatever. Your name's no longer on your voter ID or no longer on your birth certificate. It makes it harder. And then you have to have all of those documents. And getting those documents isn't always easy and isn't always free. Kevin says, bravo, Donald Trump. No. Donald Trump has done nothing good this term. Val says, because it's meant to suppress votes, talking about voter ID. Yeah, it is 110%. Val says most of Congress needs to go. Yep, they do. A lot of them need to go. First things first, though, we need to get the Republicans out of power. And again, this guy I blocked said only natural-born citizens should vote. Otherwise, you can cheat elections forever. So what about immigrants? What about immigrants who have been here legally, who have gotten their citizenship, who are legal? Do they get a vote at all? No? Oh. What about children who were adopted as babies from overseas by American citizen parents? Do they get a vote? Or are you saying that none of them can vote? User credit card number, who is already blocked, says name one Democrat policy you like. Minimum wage. The ACA. Universal health care. Trucker says, Chuck says Israel should get all the money they want. No, they shouldn't. Laura says MAGA would disagree that Dems are violent to them. Yeah, they are, but that's not the truth. Optimistic says, what do you think about Senator Graham's comments today in the White House backing ICE? I didn't see those. I'm going to have to look into it, but I'm not surprised he's backing Donald Trump at 100%. Val says they don't have any critical thinking skills. No, they don't. I think I got another one here, going to go away. This one says leftists use feelings and emotions. No, we don't. That's a trademark of the right. Trucker says to Optimistic, he's a joke, referring to Lindsey Graham. He is. Did I already block this one? I can't tell. Yep. User credit card number said those swing states did great for the Dems. Yeah, you're trying to say that that's some sort of a gotcha. Doesn't mean that what the Republicans are doing is actually a good thing. Look at how everything is going on. Val says that's why Donnie is using executive orders. Yeah, because he can't get anything through Congress. They barely have a majority at this point. Two-hitter quitter says my IQ is dropped because I sat here listening to the BS. Well, then you don't have to. And I made it so you don't have to. Laura says Biden was ridiculed for far less than what Dump is exhibiting. 110%. Donald Trump is clearly showing signs of dementia. Joe Biden had a stutter. That was it. That was their big gotcha as to how why Joe Biden was unfit, is he had a stutter. Billy says Trump is the best president ever. Well, you can go, Joe. How about you You go to a MAGA live. Deegan says, can all these unalivers from ICE be held accountable? They can and they will. There is no statute of limitations for it. At all. So ultimately they could be. They think they're going to be protected, but they're not. Brent says, and judges. I'm not sure where I'm way behind on the chat, so I don't know what you were talking to. And user credit card number that I blocked previously says, so you don't like the $1,000 for newborns, I guess. No, I don't. And not because it's coming from Donald Trump or Republicans. And not because of actually because it's coming from Donald Trump and Republicans is why I don't like it. Because the whole thing is setting up it's all about buying people's loyalty. It's not really about helping people. It's more BS that he's doing. If it wasn't about buying their loyalty or propping up his image, they wouldn't call them Trump savings accounts. They would have an actual name for them, and they would just go about doing it. But Donald Trump had to put his name attached to it. And as Laura says, that was or won't ever happen because Trump doesn't give a fuck. Exactly. Suave de Boner says defund or defang DHS. Exactly. We need to go in and fix DHS. Brent says Kristi Noem will her troops wearing BWC? Not sure. Laura says Trump loves the poorly educated, 110%. Alex says Democrats are afraid of voter ID. Nope, not at all. It's because of the of everything I talked about earlier, where it is it's disenfranchising. It has nothing to do with anything else. Alex is trying to say that Trump loves Americans. No, he doesn't. Donald Trump loves himself. Cool Down says, where'd it go? There we go. Cool Down says, I think we could cut deep into the military budget. Yes, we could. Paula says, passport, $99 for flight round trip. Well, yeah, passport's great if you have one. But if you don't have one and you have to go get one to vote, that is a poll tax. Mockle says, anything a Republican do is never a good thing. That's why they got to be watched like kids, 110%. Suave says, opinion on elected Supreme Court. 110% I hate it. Trucker says, Suave, they should be elected and not appointed. No, I disagree, Trucker. That you elect the Supreme Court, and then you have problems like what we had here in Iowa. We still have here in Iowa. We have an appointed Supreme Court with judicial retention, which I know isn't the same thing. But every election, there are members of the state Supreme Court that are up for retention. And way back before gay marriage was legalized nationwide, it was legalized here in Iowa through an Iowa Supreme Court decision. And basically, one member of the Iowa House ran a statewide campaign against the 3 judges that were up for re-election, lying about exactly what went on with them legalizing gay marriage, and all three judges were overwhelmingly voted out. Having the voters involved in judicial process is a bad idea. Cooldown says Trump is definitely more accessible. But he is only more accessible because he wants to be more accessible. Brent says judges should be accountable. Well, in theory, they are supposed to be accessible or accountable. I mean, that's what the impeachment of judges is supposed to be. However, it doesn't happen. Mary says DJT will pardon everyone. I don't think so. He's not going to unless he gets something out of it. Donald Trump is transactional. He only supports things if it benefits him. Laura says $1,000 never going to happen. It was another lie. Yeah, exactly. Everything with him is a lie. Cooldown says, how are we going to pay down the debt if we keep spending so much? The way to pay down the debt? Tax the rich. Everyone wants to talk about how great things were back in the day. Post World War II to pre-Reagan. That's when we were taxing the top 1% at 90% of their money. If you want to pay down the debt, we need to increase revenue. Bring more money into the economy or into the government, not give more money to rich people to have it sit in bank accounts. Lucy Dog says, I think you have the right idea by blocking MAGA. Much more enjoyable. Well, yeah, and I thought I blocked this one already. I did. Must have got these in before I blocked him. Trucker says we need DHS total rehaul. 110%. Oh, Brent says BWC body-worn cameras. Yeah. DHS, ICE, they all need cameras. They need to be on. They need to not wear face masks. All of it. Laura says, Doge, lie, scam, MAGA still waiting for their checks, and they're waiting for JFK Jr. returning in Dallas. Exactly. Deegan says, can Trump close the Kennedy Center for real for 2 years? Apparently. Now, I thought it was only going to be just basically some cheap renovations, but they're talking about tearing it all the way down to the bare steel. Mafalda says, is because so many performers have canceled performing at the center. Yeah. And Laura says it hurt his ego. It hurt Trump's ego. Yep, exactly. He's closing it for 2 years so it doesn't continue to hurt his ego because he took over. And it's all about protecting Donald Trump and his fragile ego. He can't accept the fact that people don't like him. Trucker says New York is instituting a new watch crew for ICE, first state to do it. Well, good for them. Mafalda says he does not want to admit his embarrassment. He's closing it. Laura says another failure with his name on it. Yeah. I love Big Dog says, Trucker T, what is that help? Is that help warn people talking about the watch crew for ICE? I'm assuming so as well. Trucker T says, it's a bad idea to have the president as well. There has to be a fix. Look at why Trump has done things. Yeah. Michael says, can't wait to see the surprised look on Trump's face when he sees he can be charged at old age. Only thing is, I don't think he lives that long. I don't think he makes it to 2029 to be out of office. But everybody around him is going to get charged because he's not going to live long enough to pardon him. Suave says 1 10-year term and done. 2 justices every 2 years. Congress appointed. Campaign funds only. That could work. But realistically, this Supreme Court is the worst we've ever had. And it's in part not because of the court itself. It's the way it is because of Congress holding up judicial nominations. Trucker said the AG came out today and said they are sending silent observers to watch ice raids. Cool. Laura says there are only two classes of people, or will be, the rich versus the poor. Yeah, and the last time it was that bad, we ended up with FDR, and we ended up with a whole bunch of social reforms and social systems. Brent says, I don't think the camera will do a thing to make them accountable, talking about body cameras on ICE agents. No, it won't, unless they're required to use it and not wear masks. But they're afraid of having their masks come off because they know, and I fully believe that they know, that when it's all said and done, they are going to be held accountable. And they think that as long as they're covering their identities, that they're never going to be tied to what they're doing. And that's just not the case. Laura says, just like the wing at the White House, anything with Dump's name on it is a failure. Yeah. Murray says a quick failure. Yep. Yeah, the whole thing with the wing at the White House, I think it's never going to actually fully get done. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't live to see it completed, and that even J.D. Vance would, in an effort to fix things, would just restore. He'd settle whatever lawsuits about the ballroom, and he'd restore the East Wing, or maybe he'd leave it as is and let the Democrats deal with it. But I think ultimately the ballroom doesn't get finished. Urban Oracle says, will anything come out of the Trumpstein files? Yeah, and we're already seeing it. We're seeing a lot of it. They are showing that Donald Trump had a big connection, and he doesn't even realize it. I think the Republicans are waiting for that right piece to be revealed publicly in a news article or something, or for enough of their own people to start talking about it. And then when they dogpile on him, Donald Trump is not going to see it coming, and they are going to remove him quickly, because they are going to try to fix the perception of themselves going forward. User credit card number says you are so lost. No, but you are. You're out of here. Trucker, I went ahead and I threw you the mod powers, just like Mike's. Go ahead and block them all. Block the Trumplafucks, if you would, please. Deegan says, why don't people talk more about Trump's health? Well, certain people are. I'm talking about it all the time. He looks pathetic. I don't think he makes it to the end of his term with his health. I think we're in the he has months to go stage. And the only reason he hasn't gone yet is because he has access to the best healthcare in the world. Laura says, ICE equals J6ers and Proud Boys. That's why they wear masks. But they hated it during COVID. Yeah, exactly. Suave says, what are your thoughts on Nadler's statements? I didn't see Nadler's statements. I'll have to look into that. Brent says, glad you're doing more lives. They're lots of fun. Yeah, I do like doing them. I just need to get out there and, take the time to do them. And I've even been doing a few later at night and just saying, screw it. Whoever shows up, shows up. If I get 10 people, cool. And we'll just have a discussion. Laura says, I don't think the ballroom or bunker will ever be completed. The ballroom, probably not. The bunker, maybe. They probably will complete the bunker and then turn around and rebuild the East Wing over it. Cooldown says, do you favor open border at legal points of entry? I don't think any Democrat supports open borders. That's another Republican lie. It's them saying the borders are open. Thing is, both Joe Biden and Barack Obama deported more people than what Donald Trump is doing, but he did it the right way. There's a right and a wrong way to handle immigration, And having basically a militia rounding people up is not the right way. The border was never fully opened. If you got caught crossing under Obama or Biden, you would still be punished. It's just a talking point by Republicans to make it sound like Democrats don't want to restrict immigration. In fact, under Biden, there was one of the most comprehensive immigration reform packages and border enforcement packages ever put forward. It was basically the Republicans' wish list. And Donald Trump didn't want it to pass. He killed it because he wanted something to run on in the elections. If that would have passed, he wouldn't have had an argument about immigration. Trucker said, I just saw a video of Alex Jones saying it's time to move on from Trump. Jesus Christ. How bad do you have to get for you to lose Alex Jones? Laura says, Dump's health is talked about all the time. Yeah. We are talking about his health all the time, and it's not good. His health is failing, and I don't think he makes it. I don't know what happens first. I don't know if he goes or if he gets bad enough that they have to 25th Amendment him. But I think they want to wait to use the 25th Amendment till he's in a state where he can't go to social media and attack them. Because if he's in any sort of a state where he can talk to the media or go to social media, he's going to try to burn everybody down around him for going ahead and turning on him, because that's how he is. He values loyalty, and he would view that as the ultimate betrayal. Laura says lives can't be easy. They're relatively easy as long as I'm, as long as I don't get overwhelmed by the Trump-la-fucks. And honestly, with as bad as everything has been with Donald Trump being president, I've noticed they're not out nearly the force they ever used to be. Brent said, you joined the last one? Yeah, I think I saw you right at the end. Laura says he'll hide in the bunker when they come after him. See, here's the funny part. It doesn't matter if he's in hiding. It doesn't matter if he's in the White House. If they remove him, he won't be president anymore. All J.D. Vance would have to do is, once they've removed him, he takes the oath of office. J.D. would have all of the authority. Donald Trump, they could keep Donald Trump showing up to the Oval Office and tell him, and just not tell him what happened, like they did with his father, and have him go to work and sit in an office room and let him play president, and he wouldn't know the difference. But he just wouldn't have any authority. Brent said, I heard Americans are being restricted coming to Canada. I don't know. I don't know if they are or not, but that's something, if they are, that's bad news. Deegan said, do you think the Sergeant of Arms are still functional? I don't know why they wouldn't be. Mockle says, his health isn't declining fast enough for me to be honest. True. But it's only being propped up because he has access to the best healthcare in the world because he's president of the United States. One member of Congress, a Democrat, I don't remember her name, is claiming that Donald Trump is getting I think it was $20,000 to $30,000 a month anti-dementia treatments. I don't know if it's true, but most people, their private insurance or Medicaid, Medicare, or they wouldn't have the funds to cover that to be able to deal with it. He's only being propped up because of his position. Laura says, I thought Dump ran on the release of the Trumpstein files. He did. He ran on releasing the Epstein files, but he wanted to do what they tried to do. He thought he could get in, say nothing to see here, and move on. And that's exactly what happened. That's what he tried to do, and it didn't work. Now he wants to get away from the Epstein files because his distraction plan failed. Laura says, no, Trumpers are awful quiet. They are. Cooldown says, okay, don't block me. Some things seem to be working. With Trucker asking, with this administration? Yeah, if there are, what? If there is something in this administration that is working, tell me. Everything he's doing is failing. Nothing is working the way it's intended. Laura says, Dump sits and shits a lot more now. Yeah, he does. By all accounting, he has not gone golfing at all since the 11th, and it sounds like he hasn't completed a full round of golf since last year. And that's just a sign of how bad his health is getting. Golf was the one thing he cared about more than anything else, maybe with the exception of his daughter, Ivanka. Malako says, I've been in a few MAGA streams. They are upset about all these flips from red to blue. Oh, if they're upset now, wait till November. Wait till November. I think you are going to see lots of things like what just happened in Texas. You're going to see seats that have been reliably Republican flipping. And you are going to see Democrats, I believe, take the House. They have a path to the Senate. And you are going to see them probably take a few state legislatures that you would think hadn't been competitive before. And they're not going to know how to react or what to do. They are going to be losing their ever-loving minds. Deegan says, what about the rumor leak that he was trying to get away to Saudi Arabia? Would not surprise me at all. Laura says, Trumpstein files are still not fully released and more nefarious things are coming out. Yeah, they've only released about half. And they are, what's already out is horrible. The other half must be completely horrendous. And that must contain the stuff that is going to sink Donald Trump. And if that stuff, I would venture a guess if the rest of the files come out, give it, a week, maybe two at the absolute back end before Republicans move on Trump. I think they know what's in there. They're going to set it up, and then they are going to move quick, fast, and in a hurry. And I firmly think that if the Republicans bring impeachment articles against Trump, they are going to end up saying that they're going to bring the articles out, already written, already ready to go. It's going to be voted on and passed in minutes. And they're going to go, it is going to go so fast, Donald Trump's head's going to spin. And he's never going to see it coming. Mockel says they are all talking on how to help Republicans win each one, but they won't admit it. Yeah, they're talking about what they can do to help, and help them win. They don't realize that the Republicans have already lost. Laura says, yes, Texas. Yeah, Texas came in huge. Queen of CGV says Trump straight up lied on TV stating he was never on the island. Oh, yeah. He's, I guarantee you he's been to the island. At least once. At least once. And he doesn't want us talking about the connections because it's going to be that bad when it all comes out. Laura says blue wave. Oh, it's going to be a blue wave. I'm thinking 40 seats in the House, and the Senate's at least in play. Now, it's going to be a tough road to get the Senate, and if we could only get one, I would rather take the Senate. But it's possible. Trucker says follow Nick Roberts. He posts all of the Democratic wins. Well, that's good to know. Patrick says, Sasha Riley, boys are hard to find. Look it up on YouTube. I've heard about that. I wish there was a little more released from the files itself to confirm anything, that Sasha Riley said. It makes sense. All of it does. I just wish there was some more evidence to back it up. Laura says, it'll hurt his friends equals guilty. Yeah. Red Right Hand says, so with all the charges against Trump, all the court cases, you're saying those people just said nah? What are you talking about? Uh, Laura says, my mother lives in Texas and is a Dump supporter. I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, Trucker got that one. Okay. Patrick says, Sasha Riley ought to be brought in to testify to tell his story, then discovery could happen. That could be something. And if there's discovery, that's the last thing Donald Trump wants in any of this. Mockel says, I believe with all this anger everyone has, we can easily push the Senate on our side. We just got to vote. Yes. When it comes to voting, I said this over on Mike's Live, over on Substack. When it comes to voting, right now we are in the primary stage. Fight like hell for the person you want in the primary. Get your person to win the primary if you can. If not, vote for the Democrat who won the primary. This is not, we cannot play this identity politics, protest vote bullshit anymore. That's the problem with Democrats versus Republicans. The Democrats, they play that shit. Look what happened with Bernie. A big group of people said, well, I'm just either not going to vote, I'm going to vote third party, or I'm going to vote for Donald Trump just to prove a point to the Democrats because they sidelined Bernie Sanders. The thing with the Republicans is Republicans came out and said, oh, Donnie's the nominee. He's got my vote. Laura says, yeah, me too. We don't talk politics. Well, that's probably for the best. At one point, my folks were pretty strong on Donald Trump, and they've turned. And they've come to terms with he's not nearly as good of a person as what they thought. In fact, as far as I know, they did vote for Kamala Harris in 2024, and that surprised me. Love Big Dog says, I heard Don Lemon interviewed Sasha Riley. I have not heard that. Patrick says he's not suing. It must be true. About Sasha Riley. That is one of the things about Donald Trump. He'll sue when it's not true. But when there's facts and stuff that'll back it up, he doesn't want that smoke and he won't sue. He just tries to ignore it and hopes it goes away. Deegan says Trump had said if he became president, he would open the files. Why is he against it now? He was always against it. Plain and simple. He was against it. He just wanted to run on releasing them so he could open them or claim to open them, say there was nothing to see here. There is no files. There was no ring. Nothing happened. Let's move on. And he thought everybody would buy it. And it didn't work. We're smarter than that. And even his own supporters are saying, wait a minute, something don't smell right. But the reason his supporters are against it is because they've been told for so long that Democrats do all these awful things to kids that they were convinced it would be nothing but Democrats. That there wouldn't be a single Republican, a single rich person. It would all be Democratic lawmakers and Democratic-leaning people, and that they would be justified in how they treated us and thought about us, etc. And they would be proven right. It just didn't happen. Patrick said this is a worldwide underground ring. Yeah. Mary says this is not a drill. Talking about voting. Exactly. Laura says those protests are way larger than any dump rally. Yeah. The protests, and they're only going to get bigger. They are only going to get bigger until he is gone. I just hope that when he is gone, and even if he doesn't make it to the end of his term and Vance becomes president, that we don't end up backing off the files and backing off of everything and saying, well, it's over now. No, it's not going to be over until Democrats are back in power. Trucker says, simple, he's in it talking about the files. Yeah, he's definitely in there. He's definitely in there. He's definitely done things. And one thing is going to come out at some point that he can't deflect away from and say, well, it's just an allegation. There's going to be a shred come out where even Republicans have to say, oh, fuck, we got to do something. Laura said, my mother will see. I don't have to say anything. Exactly. I think for my folks, it was when they started talking about fucking with Social Security. And they were really worried about, they were talking about privatizing Social Security and affecting Social Security, and they both receive it. And they said, yeah, that's enough for us. They're worried about getting their Social Security checks, and that's when they made the decision. Patrick said, worldwide underground list, and that includes world leaders. Yes, it does. And as Urban Oracle says, it's horrendous. Yes, it is. Mako says, I remember long ago how much Trump wanted Hollywood to like him. Oh, yeah. He wanted Hollywood to like him. He wanted the New York financial circles and the wealthy to like him, and they never did. Patrick says, Sasha Riley tent stake Trump in diapers. Yeah, if that's true, that is, that could be easily proven with some medical records, or disproven with medical records. And you would think that if it wasn't true, Donald Trump would come out and say, yeah, it never happened, I can prove it, but he's not doing that. Mako says, after what he did to Don at the Grammys, it's never happening. Hollywood is speaking now. Yeah, exactly. And it's against him. Yeah, Hollywood is coming out. And there were several celebrities that came out, and some of the stuff they said previously in support of Trump is enough to, turn your point of view on him. Laura says, Trump doesn't say anything about his assassin either. It was staged. It could be. Could have been very easily. It would. The thing is, if it was any other politician, it wouldn't have surprised, or it would have surprised me to say that there was something funny there. But because it's Donald Trump and because of everything else going on, it wouldn't surprise me, and that's part of it. Let's see. Oh, already gone. Eway says, America first, Trump is your president. No. He may be the president. He's not my president, and he's definitely not America first. He is Trump first. Patrick says, Jim Jordan. Yeah, Jim Jordan is in the files, I guarantee you. Brent says, all it takes is one photo. One photo showing the right thing, and the Republicans are going to move on him so fast his head will spin. Laura says, Dump is in the files. He is. Laura says, good for your parents, talking about how they moved away from Donald Trump. Yeah, it took them being affected personally, but they did. Deegan says over 2 to 3 million people have been protesting in 50 states. Why can't they just march to the White House now? Because that's not how our system works. That is not how our system works. We have the only people who can remove Donald Trump legally is Congress. Now, it can be done a couple of ways. Congress could impeach and remove him, which they should do. They should have done a long time ago. Or J.D. Vance can use the 25th Amendment with support of the cabinet and say, yeah, Donald Trump's not fit to be president anymore. And Congress could concur and remove him. The only other way Donald Trump becomes not the president between now and January 20th, 2029 is if he voluntarily resigns like Nixon. And he's not going to do that at all. He's just not. That's not in his nature. He's not going to run no matter how bad it gets. Laura says more and more celebs are speaking out. Well, that's good for them. They should. Trucker T says codename Wet Wipes, the guy that had to clean him in Hollywood. You couldn't pay me enough. You could not pay me enough. Laura says, I knew the second he was shot, it was staged. There's so many weird things about all of it that it makes you question it. The fact that they were supposedly protecting him after shots were fired, but yet he was able to get his head out and exposed, raise his fist. Apparently the crane lowered the flag, and you watch Secret Service bring the reporters back in so they can get the shot of him standing up triumphantly. It all looks staged. It looks like something you would see in a movie. And a B movie at best. Mary says, DJT said, move on, journalist. Yeah. Yeah. He basically said, don't quit talking about the files. That has been his entire strategy this whole time, has been to not talk about the files. Patrick says he was honored with a WWF title. Huh. I didn't hear about that. David said, U.S. is going the way of the Roman Empire. What do you mean by that? Patrick says, I think he told his story just before the shutdown. Article 2, Section 4. I keep seeing Article 2, Section 4. And a lot of people get it wrong. Article 2, Section 4 outlines who can be impeached as part of, and what for. It does not work that if they impeach Donald Trump, everybody doesn't go away. And it definitely would not mean that Trump, Vance, and the entire cabinet is gone and Kamala becomes president. None of that happens. There is no system in which that would ever happen. They would have to impeach them all separately if they were to. I don't think they're going to need to. I think what's going to happen is Donald Trump is going to go away, whether he dies, whether he gets impeached or whatever. When he's gone, J.D. Vance is going to become president, and everybody around him that we think needs to be impeached is going to end up either resigning or being fired by J.D. Vance as he tries to right the ship for the Republican Party. Mary says maybe he'll go away for a pardon. I don't think so. If he wasn't dealing with the dementia, maybe. But if you add in the dementia, he's not going to do it. Laura says, Dump hit his ear like it was a bug, no recoil. Trucker says there has to be proven treason for that, or we have to do it one at a time. I still don't think with proven treason that they all get removed. I think you still have to do it one at a time, Trucker. Patrick says it was all staged just like the Kirk funeral. That's why Linda McMahon is in the cabinet. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Laura says they're starting to impeach people. The thing is, if articles of impeachment pass the House right now with the Republicans in the majority, I firmly believe that whoever they have charged with impeachment will be removed. Patrick says they will get rid of the administration on their conduct. Probably. Laura says pardon equals guilty. That's the Republican mindset. Now, there were some people who got pardoned for things they never did. Specifically the ones that got pardoned as Joe Biden was leaving office. And he did that trying to prevent them from being falsely charged by Donald Trump. Deegan says, what about the rumor Trump wanted to declare martial law? There's no mechanism in the United States Constitution for the declaration of martial law. Martial law means the military takes over. If we have martial law, we no longer have a constitution. There's no way to do it. If Donald Trump did try to use the military, I think the Republicans in Congress would try to actually remove him. And like I said earlier, it doesn't matter if he doesn't leave the White House or whatever. All it would take is for them to pass it convict him, say he's out of office, and then J.D. Vance to be sworn in, and he would have the full power of the presidency. And then once he's out of power, the military would not be required to listen to Donald Trump. The other thing is what we showed in Minneapolis. There's far more of us than there are of them. They don't have enough people to even come close to end up pulling off martial law. Urban says, Article 3, how would the Epstein files legally trigger impeachment of a Supreme Court justice? It wouldn't automatically trigger an impeachment of a Supreme Court justice. That would have to be done just like impeaching anybody else. They would have to have articles drawn up in the House. They would have to get voted on and passed, and they would go on to a trial in the Senate. Now, if there is evidence that somebody on the Supreme Court is connected to Epstein, it wouldn't surprise me if you get bipartisan support to remove them. And if they start talking that way, it also wouldn't surprise me if the Supreme Court justice in question, whichever one it could be, would end up saying, yeah, you know what, in order to avoid that smoke, I'm going to resign. Because ultimately, impeachment does not carry any sort of a criminal penalty. It's 110%. It's 100% all political. The only penalty for impeachment is removal from office and being barred from ever holding office again. Patrick says, how come there was no ruling on tariffs? No ruling yet. They've held the case. They just don't. They don't have to have their ruling out till the end of their term, which is the end of June. So they could release it at any point between now and the end of June, and I firmly believe the Supreme Court is looking for a way to ultimately give Donald Trump an out, where they don't let the tariffs stand, but they turn around and they also don't make the administration pay back the tariffs already collected. Deegan says, what if he invokes the Insurrection Act? He could try. Again, more of us than there are of them. And that could be challenged through the courts as well. And if the courts side against Donald Trump like I think they would, well, that's another problem for Donald Trump. Like they could say, well, nope, it's an unlawful use of the military. And that it doesn't apply. Patrick says, Anita Hill was right about Thomas. Believe the survivors. Well, yeah. If we would believe the survivors half the time, a lot of people wouldn't get away with the stuff they did. Trucker T says, of course she was. Exactly. Michael says, the fight isn't over when we vote in the midterms. We still got Schumer and Jeffries to get out too. Possibly. Apparently there is a primary challenger for both Schumer and Jeffries. And again, they could get voted out. It's entirely possible. And it's also possible that it's not a guarantee that either one is going to be in leadership when the next Congress takes over. If enough younger progressives get in there, if we vote in enough nationwide, that they could end up deciding that it's more beneficial to end up going with somebody else. And, we could end up changing leadership that way. Laura says, tariffs are Trump's veiled threats. They are. I don't know what you're talking about there. Trucker says, who are the challengers? I'm not 100% sure. I just know I'd seen some stuff about potential primary challengers for both of them. Especially when it was coming up before Jeffries ended up siding with and endorsing Mamdani as mayor for New York City. Urban says, we need Batman to throw the bat signal to Dexter Morgan. Michael says, the only thing that worries me is Pelosi with her connections. She stole SOTH from AOC. Yeah. Thing is, Pelosi's not running for re-election again. She's not. She is done after this term. So Nancy Pelosi is going to be potentially a non-factor. And that's what we need. We need people. I'd been saying for a while, are you telling me the only person we could find in San Francisco as a Democrat to run is Nancy Pelosi? Trucker says, but your boy Grassley is. Yeah, Chuck fucking Grassley. Jesus fucking Christ. Motherfucker's 92 years old. He's up for re-election in 28, and he wants to run again. Deegan says, what's going to happen to Mike Johnson when Trump is gone? Well, Mike he's hanging on by a thread right now. He's not going to be Speaker of the House come next year when Democrats take over. He's going to fade back into obscurity. And when Donald Trump is gone, if there is anything that he was connected to, and when they do the big investigation, it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility that he ends up getting charges. And because that they lost the House under his watch, he may be out of Republican leadership as well. And for those that are worried, come January 3rd, when the next Congress is sworn in, the previous Speaker of the House has nothing to do with swearing in the new Congress. I want to clarify that. Okay? Mike Johnson he'll be out as Speaker. What they will have to do, assuming the Democrats are in control, is they will have a vote for Speaker of the House. Democrats will vote for presumably Hakeem Jeffries, but it could be anybody. As soon as they get somebody over the 218 threshold, that person becomes Speaker. They get sworn into Congress by like the House parliamentarian or something like that. It's a nonpartisan person who helps just with the day-to-day rules of everything. And then that new Speaker will swear in the rest of the House. Mike Johnson will not be able to prevent the next Congress from being sworn in. Patrick says it all started with Reagan, Bush, Clinton's Obama. I'd agree with you. It started with Reagan. But they're not all connected to everything bad that's going on. Trucker said the Texas governor's race is starting to tighten. Oh, good. Does that mean Abbott might be out? And who's the Democrat running to replace Abbott? Because if we can flip Texas, here's the thing. For some of these states, I'm convinced if they can get, 2 to 4 years of Democrats in charge and they start passing policies that actually help people, they could end up being in control for quite a while. Deegan says, remember what happened to John Dean and others when Nixon left? Asking about Stephen Miller. Yeah, that's the thing. If there are major investigations, they would end up, all of them could be facing some amount of charges. Trucker says she's Hispanic, not sure of her name. Okay. Yeah, I don't know her name off the top of my head. There's so much going on, it's hard to keep track of all of the races. Mako says, my political dream is to flip Texas in my lifetime. I want to see Texas flip. Yeah, I would love to see Texas go back to being blue. And they were blue at one point. Remember, LBJ was from Texas. And he was a liberal Democrat. It's not outside the realm of possibility. Not outside the realm of possibility at all. Patrick says Oprah is all over. Ellen, Rock, Johnson, Rosie O'Donnell. Why did they leave the country? Some of them left because they didn't want to deal with being persecuted by Donald Trump. You see how Donald Trump goes after his political enemies. And others, they left because they have the funds and they have the means to. That's part of it too. Why wouldn't they? I mean, like Rosie O'Donnell is very outspoken against Donald Trump. And, he doesn't like her at all. Why wouldn't she leave the country? Deegan says, what about Steve Bannon? Where is he? He's, probably in a back alley somewhere. Dude looks homeless all the time. Apparently he's making a run for president for the Republican nomination, which is hilarious. He's still doing his shitty podcast, but he's not part of the main power structure this time. Trucker says Arturo Espinoza is her name. Okay. Patrick says that's what Bitcoin is used for, the payment for trafficking. It's part of it. I know that's one of the things why people in that I don't want to know what the right word is. I know it's not an industry that in that area, I guess, they like it because it is not money and it's unregulated and all those kind of things. Trucker says in that orbit. Yeah, there's a good way to put it. They like Bitcoin and other non-regulated things like that because it's easier for them to move around. One of the reasons why we currently have a federal limit that they can only print currency up to $100 bills. You ever wondered about that? Well, in the 70s, under Nixon, they passed a law saying they could not print money in any higher denominations anymore because of drug running and other illegal activities. We used to have denominations all the way up to $100,000 bills. Well, if you have $100,000 bills, 10 of them is $1 million. You can carry that in your wallet. You can walk $1 million out of the country, in no time. Patrick says Epstein was involved with Pope John II. He lived at the Vatican. I had not heard that. Trucker says, do yourself a favor and look into the founders of Ashley Furniture and Epstein. Well, hey, maybe that's why J.D. Vance is so deeply connected to Donald Trump, because the founders of Ashley Furniture are connected. Patrick says it was in the files about Epstein living at the Vatican. I haven't seen it. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying I have not personally seen it. And that would be if the connection isn't beyond I would be surprised if there was any sort of a connection with Pope John II, that there was something nefarious going on his part. He may be one of the ones that that is just in the files because he knew Epstein. Maybe there wasn't anything nefarious, but I don't know that for sure. Heather says they make some hot couches at Ashley Furniture. I know, just ask JD Vance, he'll tell you. All right. Well, I've been going a little over an hour and a half here. I'm going to go ahead and get this, wrapped up. I'm going to go ahead and get it downloaded so I can get it up over on my YouTube page and over on Spotify. This will be the Analytical Iowan podcast for tomorrow, technically, for the 4th. This is a reminder for everybody out there. I do have the Analytical Iowan podcast. I do a show daily where I talk about news, politics, basically what I'm doing here. So I encourage you to check it out. And if you missed part of the live, you came in late, you want to catch the beginning of it, that's where you can do that. Is going to be over on either my YouTube page at Analytical Iowan or over on Spotify for the audio at Analytical Iowan. There is a link tree in my bio, will take you to both. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I hope you guys have a great night, and I will catch you the next time I go live.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.